All right, guys, let's talk about rooftop tents. This is mine. It is from HiTents, and this is their Jalama expedition grade rooftop tent. They have two different versions. There is another one that does allow for the annex, so it's got a slight overhang and then allows for the additional room. I prefer this one. I don't need the additional annex, so having kind of a more compact version, I don't want a lot of overhang, a lot of extra material to flap in the wind, so the Jalama is the version for me. It is the expedition grade, which means it has some additional upgrades which allow it to be a little bit more ruggedized, just some reinforcement, some thicker canvas, just stuff that makes it a little bit nicer when you're four-season camping. This is technically a three-man tent, and I can attest that you can get 3 adult individuals in there. On a couple of my girls' trips, we have crammed in there with a couple of puppies as well, so it is possible. It is a little tight, but definitely something you could handle if you needed to. Again, I've had this one for 3 years, almost 3 years, and I absolutely love it. I think rooftop tents are definitely not for everyone, and they're definitely hot and trendy right now. They're not new. They have been in the scene for a while, but definitely have caught fire recently. I love being on my truck, off the ground. It kind of has a little bit of a treehouse vibe. They're just something I really enjoy about climbing in there at the end of the night and just feeling snug and secure in my little den. But in no way is this a knock against ground tent camping, and especially as the technology and how far ground tents have come, I do think that that is also a great option for camping. But this is my choice. This is what I love. So, and one of the big questions I get a lot is, why is it deployed this way? Variety of tents have different options for that. And gosh, and as the industry grows, we're seeing even more options, which is fantastic. I have chosen specifically to have it deployed driver side. One, because I typically am a solo driver. This is kind of the primary side of my vehicle anyway, so it just makes sense for convenience. I'm usually working on this side. And also, worst case scenario, it's somewhat of a security thing for me. If I ever had to exit the tent in an emergency, I want to be as close to my driver side as possible, because that's my exit. So that's kind of my thought process on that. But reality, it's just the most convenient side for me. It's kind of where I function and just how I work around my campsite. What else do we talk about? We have a Rainfly, and this is removable. And I do think that that is important, especially if you're going to camp in windy conditions, which in Southern California, you encounter quite a bit during the winter, even in the summer. But if having something that you can remove and then being able to really batten down or tighten up all the canvas on the tent, for me, makes a huge difference, because that flapping or things just hitting the tent from the wind can be really obnoxious for me. So I really value that. This is a thick canvas, there's not a lot of flapping, and everything has a tie down or a way to fasten it and get it tight to the tent, which really makes it nice. So this is removable, and then I'm able just to kind of keep everything in, out of the wind. This version also comes with some shoe bags, which you're seeing a lot of brands do this, a lot of companies do this with tents. And I thought it was kind of like, oh, I don't need it, I'm good. But once I got them, it's great. You climb up there, you take your shoes off, you put them in the bags, you climb in. So your shoes never have to get in there, especially when it's raining or muddy or snowy or gross. You don't really have to get anything close to your tent. So it actually really is a convenient feature. There's also some netting. There's some options with these nets too. These come when you make the purchase, and they're just different ways to either store your gear, maybe some, wet towels from the beach, or additional shoes, or whatever you really need. So you can have it down here. You could also have them tucked up in the tent if you wanted some canvas or little hammocks to store your stuff. What else here? Oh, inside. So this is another thing. A lot of tents are now doing condensation mats. And condensation is really something you can't get away from in a rooftop tent, just because of the amount of exposure You know, you're in here, you're warm, and you're breathing as well. So you're creating a warm little pocket of air. If on cold nights, it's science. There's gonna be condensation. So condensation mats are an effort to kind of keep your mattress off there so that it's not absorbing too much moisture. Moisture does happen on these things. It's unavoidable. But I will say, finding a tent that secures your condensation mat to the bottom of your tent is key. I have had older versions of this tent before HiTents was doing that, and so the condensation mat was, you could slide it around, or it would slide around, and it was a nightmare. You're fighting it every time you open the tent, and you want something that just really holds tight. If not, there are ways to do it yourself. If you don't have a tent that is fastened down, there are little tacks you can get, or ways to secure it, but it makes a world of difference. Mattress thickness is also a big thing. I will say this is perfect for me, for my size and my weight. I'm able to sleep on it with no additional padding or anything and be fine throughout the night. But if you are a little heavier, like my other half, 6'4", over 200 pounds, most men that I talk to, this sometimes can be a problem. It isn't enough padding. It's not just HiTents, it's just kind of rooftop tents, mattresses in general. And you know, you're finding pressure points, hips are going numb, kind of a thing. So I put, it's a Mega Mat Duo. So it's an additional air mattress. So when the two of us are sleeping in here, we like to have that additional comfort. And what's great about that Mega Mat is it fits almost perfectly in here. Sleeping bags, pillows also go in. Actually, I'll hop on up. So give you some spatial understanding of how the size in here. And again, all tents are totally different. What I do really appreciate about this is the headroom, and that eliminates kind of the claustrophobic feeling that sometimes occurs in these tents. I've strung up some, kind of all over the place, but some Revel Gear twinkle lights, and those stay in here all the time. Sometimes I have to re-secure them, but I like to kind of make it a very warm, inviting area, so it's the place, like at the end of the night when you're tired, you can come in and slip up here and sleep. Obviously we have 2 windows, and we also have this one that opens as well. I have foregone my window to the cab side, and the reason for that is when I got this set up, I chose to have the cage a little bit lower, and that was just for wind resistance issues. And by doing so, I eliminate the ability to adhere or put the poles into the tent at the correct angle. So I was aware of that, and it was something that I was willing to give up for, one, the aesthetics of having it a little lower, and the aerodynamic benefits. So what else? And lastly, or one of the last things I want to talk about is the ladder options that you can get. And I've seen quite a few options out there, and I'm happy to see that there is becoming more of a variety. This is probably the most traditional, just slides out on these rails. You drill different holes to get a variety of options, which you're gonna want, especially if you're someone who camps as like in dispersed areas or in really uneven areas. So you're not always gonna get a flat, great campsite. This does work for me, and I figured ways around having uneven surfaces, but there are also more telescopic, I think is what they're called, versions, which can kind of give you a little bit more variety, but there are more moving parts with those and a lot more plastic. So kind of a give and take. This one is a simple design, aluminum, less chance for failure maybe. It kind of depends on what you're going for, but there are other options out there, so definitely want to look into that. I will say someone has got to create a ladder where it doesn't kill your feet getting in and out someday. I have tried a variety, and it always hurts your feet. So that's just something that you just got to deal with, unfortunately. But yeah, I am stoked to have it. I think this has made camping so much more fun. Just the experience of, again, that whole treehouse vibe is just something that I really dig. It works for me. and I'm stoked to have it as a part of my setup. And finally, I promise, this is the last thing. Maintenance for your rooftop tent. I think kind of a misconception is, you bolt it on there and you're ready to go and you never have to worry about it again. And it's definitely not the case. Like pretty much anything we attach to our vehicles for off-road travel, whatever that may be, you do need to be checking all of the nuts and bolts and anything that has a screw, you need to be double checking. And that's not just the attachment points to whatever rail system you have. And mine, this is how, there's an attachment rail that goes to the tent and those bolt directly to my cage. A lot of people go, okay, well, these are tight, I'm good. But reality is you also need to be checking the bolts that attach the rails to the bottom of the rooftop tent. And these are or you would tighten those from the inside underneath the mattress. And I will say from personal experience, kind of out of sight, out of mind, I didn't realize it until one day on trail, my tent was literally shifting onto the cage. And I thought, that's crazy, these are tight, but the rail had actually come loose. So please learn from that, from me. And that's something you definitely want to be checking every few months, especially if you're gone, maybe it's not even anything extreme, but just dirt roads, that constant rattling can definitely just wreak havoc on any of your hardware. So keep that in mind, something you want to be double checking. Also something that can become just dried out, get dirt and dust and debris in it is your zipper. And you'll notice that right away because opening and closing the zipper will become very frustrating. Even worse so in cold temperatures. It just seems to be, it doesn't like it. So a good thing and good maintenance for them is to keep them clean from dust. So if you've been out on the trail like I have recently, either taking some compressed air and blowing out the dust. And you also can it almost acts as a lubricant. You want to use beeswax and go ahead and get those in there, and it'll make the zipper mechanism glide much easier on those teeth. And it makes a world of difference. So keeping that clean is definitely saves yourself some stress. And you want to be double checking these bolts, nuts and bolts as well. So this is your hinge, basically, the opening shutting mechanism of the tent. These are also things that can loosen up over time. And when they go, you can actually damage a lot more and it's not repairable. So another spot you want to be checking. This is an area you don't want to tighten too much because it is a hinge, and if you do tighten that down too much, you can have a problem opening it. So it's one of those things you want to just maintain, make sure they're in there, make sure they're snug, and then you're good to go. But I wanted to remind you guys of that, so that's it.